Okay, so the workable unit of one, how to estimate less. What I'm going to be talking about is that I'm going to tell you a story of a team and how they figured out how they could actually spend less time estimating. And in the meantime, spending more time thinking about delivering their releases, their versions, whatever you want to call them, delivering the value out from the team and not trying to think too much about the estimation part of it. Now, even though this was a good thing for this team to spend less time estimating, I'm not telling you that you should spend less time estimating. If you need to estimate, you have to do it. This team did it, and it worked for them. They figured out a way, so I'm here trying to tell you a story that hopefully you can learn of, and hopefully one day I will see some of you bring me a lecture that you figured out something new. So please keep in mind that this is just how this team worked. I'm not saying this is the universal truth. This is an idea that might fit some of you out there. There are a couple of things that help out here that this team I'm going to be talking about, the story I'm going to tell you, is I would like to say it's a team performing. They're not storming or norming. They're in a state that they're actually really, they are delivering frequently. So they're in a place where they're delivering and they're trying to focus on the delivery. But this should be something that you can apply to any team. It doesn't matter how mature they are. You should be able to apply some of this if you want to. This talk is a little bit related to my last year's talk. You can find that on YouTube under UTmessan, and it was titled Waiting for the Next Big Release. So, like any other romantic agile story, it starts off with a product owner who meets up with a team and they fall in love through the backlog. And this is the story that I'm going to be talking about. It's a very simple team. We don't see the Scrum Master. I'm the Scrum Master. I'm describing what I see here. And they start off by talking, how can we get this backlog of tickets in the middle and create something that we can deliver. It's a package, it's a version, it's something that we're going to release and give to somebody. And as I said, this team is mature. They've been doing the Agile game and the Scrum game, so they come up with planning poker. We can do that. We know how to play this game of estimating. So they set off and go to a grooming meeting, which is not actually part of Scrum, but many people use it to try and figure out, what are the sizes of these tickets that we had there. Let's give them some value. So they sit down, they grab a bunch of cards, and they start playing. And in this example, we can see, we've got different numbers here, 1, 5, 13, 20, 40, 100. This might be a typical setup of a planning poker game that you're playing today. And for those of you who don't know what planning poker is, we meet up, we're playing planning poker, and we take one story and with one ticket, one item there behind the version, and we talk about, what is this? What does this mean that somebody needs to log in? We figure out, so we get a consensus from the team, and then everybody puts down a number. I might put down 5, and 2 other guys put down 5, but one actually puts down 1 for some reason. So then we're actually trying to enforce everybody to get their voice in, so we get all the information, because maybe the guy who had 1, he knew something, but he didn't want to say it, because, well, being a developer, you're not always a social butterfly. But through this card, he said 1, and then he actually gave a reason. Well, it's a framework that we can just adopt, and it doesn't cost us anything. So that explains planning poker. But what happens for this team? They start working in their Scrum sprint, and then they go to the retrospective. And the team says, well, guys, that 100 ticket, that's just way too big. We can't complete stories in a sprint that's 100. We have to do something about it. I mean, we might split them up, but, can we just remove that from the deck? Just to make things simpler. So the next time around, you can see there's no 100 there. They're just playing with a maximum of 40 points. And all is good, and they play along. And a couple of sprints in, they run into the same issue. 40 is too big. Yeah, this is 40. Sorry, this is done with Roblox font. The kids play it. It's for the kids. So it's the same dilemma. 40 is too big. Can't we remove that too? And they do. So I guess you can see where this is heading. 3 times again, and we're going to end up with just one little hint where I'm going here. And I've seen this numerous times in teams. Because we're trying to, well, there can be many reasons, but it really makes sense. You don't want to put too big things in. You want to fit them in a sprint. And sometimes you even just want to enforce yourself in trying to break the items better into more smaller items. So this makes perfect sense, and I've seen this in all teams I've been in. So, version 1.2, bam, the team delivers and lives happily ever after, right? We all know this, we deliver and then we just go off and do something else. Well, if that was the case. We all live happily ever after until we have more products. Because what actually happens is that the product owner comes about 2 seconds after release version 1 and says, hey guys, I've got a great idea. Let's do another thing, another product. Because the reality is that not every one of us is so lucky to have just one team with one product and live in the perfect Scrum world. This team did for a couple of sprints. They released their version, and then they actually got a new product now. And then the product owner goes, oh, well, and the first version, I've got another idea that we can do there. And for the new product, I've got a whole bunch of stuff that we can do there. Okay, so the team sits down. It's going to start grooming. And then they've added in the 140 again because they've got another product. And for some reason, the reality is the reason the product owner wants both versions at the same time. You're going to work on 2 things at the same time. This, for me, is the reality. This is what happens. So the team is kind of confused, how are we going to compare these 2 things? Because if you look into story points, the numbers on the cards in planning poker, they're only relative to other items in the same product. You can't compare a 1 in the colored version and the 1 in the gray version, because there might be another baseline we're starting off. They're only relative to the effort within the same product. So here comes the dilemma, or the misuse in many cases, where teams are trying to use story point in a synchronized way between products, even between teams, even saying, points are essentially hours. We can map them through. If you want to go that way, just estimate in hours. It's better for everybody. But I'm also willing to say that I've been a developer, and it doesn't even matter if I'm a developer. If you ask me how long I'm going to take to do something, and if I say more than 4 hours, I have no idea. If I haven't done it before, I have no idea. I mean, it doesn't matter if I say 2 days or 5 days. I'm just trying to predict the future, and that's hard. Because estimation, if you actually look at the word, the estimation is just a guess. It's the best educated guess that we can get. And yes, we can have planning poker and do things to help us out. But basically, we're just guessing and trying to figure out the future without really knowing. So what happens to the team is that they're kind of stuck here. How are we going to do this? And they're talking about, why are we playing this game? Why are we playing this game? We're actually, people are fighting over this is a 5 or an 8 or what numbers this is. Does it really matter? Why are we wasting time for this team trying to estimate or trying to put numbers on things when, does it really matter? And what happened is that the product owner went to a no estimate seminar and came back one day and said, hey guys, can we do no estimates? And well, the team was like, we can't do no estimates. I mean, we'd love to do just whatever, but we got to have some plan. And given that this team did have a release plan, so they were in a pretty good spot to do whatever they wanted, kind of, estimation-wise. As I said, if you want more details on the release plan, see the lecture from last year. So the team talked about it and said, well, rather than doing no estimate, could we do one estimate? I mean, we've already seen it, that we wanted to cut down the number of cars we have just into, if we do it a couple more times, we just have one. So could we do something like that, just saying, this is just an item that we're going to do. So, but what does it mean? The team is discussing, and we're trying to figure out, what does it mean to have just one estimate? Can we do this? And so what we are saying is that one is approved by the team. Meaning that if we put a one onto something, it's got this stamp of approval. The team has said, we approve this. We can agree that we know we can't do this, and we approve of the setup of this item, of this story, or whatever you call it, this requirement. And we're also saying that one means it's ready. We did put this stamp of approval, this one on it, saying that it's ready. We don't need more details. We've got everything we need here. We have marked it as one. It's actually the same you do in planning poker. You're just saying a number. We're just saying one. The only thing we're saying is one. So the question becomes, how many ones can we deliver in one sprint? Because before, we're always trying to think of, how many story points can we get through? And a team starts out by doing the 0 sprint, and then they do the first couple of sprints, and they're trying to figure out the norm of how many story points you can get through. But we're actually just shifting it towards just the ones, just how many ones can we get through? And so by saying that we approve it, and we've stamped it with approval, we're also saying, we can do this in one sprint. And for this team, we're saying, we're doing 2-week sprints. We can do this in 2 weeks. That's the approval we're saying. If it's got a 1 on it, we can do it in one sprint. And we have to figure out how many we can get through without having to count all the story points. So this is essentially the concept of the workable unit of 1. And for this particular team, this worked, because in the end, you don't have to waste all your time, at least for this team, we didn't have to waste our time in arguing about if it took, if this was 5 points or 8. They didn't completely agree, and they had to do some discussion, look at the baseline, where are we at? We just removed all that and just figured out, can we approve this? And if it wasn't approved, it was too big. So it's just like binary, just one is approved. If it's got nothing, then it's not approved. That meant that the product owner had to do some more work. He had to break it down. He had to get some more details. He had to get some things to get this through the approval of the team. Now, I know that this doesn't work for everybody, and it especially does not work for any supervisor or somebody who asks, well, how much effort do you put into this task compared to this task? We don't know. It doesn't matter if the task is 5 minutes and we can do it just relatively quick, or 5 days, or even 10 days. We're not looking at that. We're just saying we can do this in one sprint. That means when we're planning for each sprint, then we might have to think about it, just how many items can we complete? That's just something we do there, and that's something that people actually do. I mean, you can walk up to a developer and ask him, I've got a lot of papers here. How much time would you need? And you say 2 years. That's just a guess. In the end, it's just a guess, and we're just trying to reduce all the time worrying about the guess, because at the moment that you tell somebody it's going to take me 2 years, even if I say I'm just guessing it's going to take me 2 years in the best case scenario, the only thing the other person is going to hear is 2 years. And the reason for the story points was to try and remove all connection to time and space from those items. To just say it's just an effort that needs compared to all the other items on the backlog. So for this team, well, I called it the Workable Unit 1 because it sounded better than we're just playing planning poker with just 1. But we actually just skipped the planning poker cards and just said, either we approve this, nobody has any objections, we have discussed this, we have a common consensus that we can do this. And then we just left it off to the planning meeting to decide how many items we took in. That just evened out. And in the end, we were just focusing on releases and getting things through. If you need more information on me, I guess there's no Q&A. I figured that out yesterday. So I'm done. Hopefully way under 30 minutes. Thank you.